Hello, and welcome to the ShopLogic podcast. I am your host, Adrienne. Welcome back if you are a listener of this podcast all about ethical consumerism. And if it's your first time listening, you might be wondering what this podcast is all about. It's your source to learn how what we buy affects you, others, animals, and the planet. On this podcast, I discuss learning how to buy better, reading labels, being aware of how our purchases impact our health, the environment, animals, and laborers. I discuss anything and everything we shop for. That includes food, personal care products, cosmetics, fashion, and much, much more. Learn how you can shop guilt-free, know which brands to choose and support with your money, and make a positive impact on animals, people, and the planet, and learn which ones to avoid that are creating negativity in the world. But don't worry, I don't just present problems, I offer solutions. It's about giving power to the consumer, that's you, through transparency and awareness. It's a shopping education, if you will. The ultimate goal is to not be so clueless as to what we support when we vote with our dollars. It's not about perfection, it's about doing the best we can each time we shop to improve our own health, the livelihoods of others, animal welfare, and the environment for sustainability. If you think about it, we consume every single day, so it is the most effective and impactful way that you can really make a difference. On today's episode, we are going to talk about dairy, cow welfare, can't give up cheese, why so many products contain milk ingredients, lobbying, milk marketing campaigns, vegan alternatives, top dairy-free brands, lab-grown milk. Sounds like a lot, so let's dig right in. Did you know there are approximately 1.58 billion cattle in the world? Yes, think about that for just a second. And the commercial cattle industry slaughters around 30 million cattle each year in the US alone and nearly 300 million worldwide. Wow. Don't worry, I'm not going to get too graphic in this episode, but I wanted to start with some very surprising statistics so you understand the gravity of the situation when it comes to dairy and cattle and the demands that consumers create. Obviously, there is nothing natural about those numbers at all. If you're thinking that consuming dairy and consuming meat is natural, it is anything but that. If you think about it, cows can't really survive in the wild on their own. Bovine animal used to look and be much, much different. It's with the slow domestication of animals, all of the animals that we consider livestock these days, cows, pigs, chickens, etc. None of them can really stand a chance being in nature. That's because they're unnatural. Just like cats and dogs, they were bred specific ways to become more people-friendly, more docile, lose a lot of their instincts, and yes, become a far cry from the original natural animal. Early dairy farming looked very different from today's modern industrial systems. Families often kept just a few cows, milked them by hand, and calves sometimes remained with their mothers longer. Milk was seasonal and local. Industrial dairy farming accelerated in the 20th century, very recently, with refrigeration, mechanized milking, selective breeding, and factory farming systems. Massive dairy operations, known as CAFOs, that stands for Concentrated Animal Feeding Operations, became common in many countries. Today, the dairy industry is a global multi-billion-dollar industry, and debates around animal welfare, climate impact, and ethics have intensified. What comes to mind when you imagine cows on a farm? Are you thinking green rolling hills, a red barn, cows grazing under sunlight, a farmer carrying milk buckets, calves running around nearby? Well, this is the image deeply tied to dairy marketing. That is the advertisement version. However, the reality on many large farms is very industrial. The reality is thousands of cows in crowded barns or dirt lots, concrete floors slick with manure, mechanical milking machines attached to the cows multiple times daily, calves separated from their mothers shortly after birth, ear tags, artificial insemination schedules, and veterinary interventions. Huge manure lagoons producing methane gas. Yikes. It is a very, very grim reality for these cows. Sometimes they never get to graze. They never see the light of day and they never get to touch grass. So, for obvious reasons, vegans object to dairy. Many argue that dairy production inherently depends on animal exploitation. Some key concerns include repeated pregnancy cycles. Like humans, cows only produce milk after giving birth. So if you're thinking all cows just somehow have milk, that is a misconception. The cow has to be female and has to have had a baby in order to produce the milk, just like us humans and any other mammal. So most dairy cows are artificially inseminated once per year. What does that involve? Well, a machine or a farmer's hand impregnating the female cow manually. So you can imagine what that might be like. Very uncomfortable, very unnatural. And the reason they do this is for more of a guarantee, and they don't want to wait for the natural way of two cows mating. So they forcefully will impose a pregnancy. Female cows are kept pregnant repeatedly, and they're milked for most of the year. This cycle will continue until her milk production declines. The next reason, calf separation. This is one of the biggest emotional concerns because on many farms, calves are removed from their mothers within hours or days. It's so sad. The milk that's intended for those little babies is instead sold commercially for humans to use, and the calves are fed from a baby bottle. Imagine a giant plastic baby bottle that they milk from instead of their own mother. Remember, it's all about profit with these industries, so that is why they are going to remove the calf from the mother to take all the milk to be sold in stores. Female calves often become dairy cows. If they're female, they're going to keep them on the farm. Male calves, however, enter veal or beef industries because they have no use for them on a dairy farm, essentially. This separation from mother and baby causes distress and trauma for both the mom and calf. Farm workers and observers often describe cows vocalizing loudly for days after separation. There is selective breeding that occurs for extreme milk production. Modern dairy cows produce vastly more milk than their ancestors. A wild or traditional cow might have produced enough for one calf, but modern high-yield breeds can produce 6 to 10 gallons daily. This creates udder infections, also known as metastasis, lameness, metabolic stress, and joint problems. And they have shortened lifespans. A cow can naturally live 15 to 20 years, but many commercial dairy cows are slaughtered at around 4 to 6 years old. Why? Because she can't produce milk anymore. So if you are just vegetarian and you're thinking, okay, well, I don't support the killing of animals, but I'll still consume milk and cheese and yogurt and butter, etc., you are essentially still contributing to the meat industry because they are going to find a way to profit off of these animals and exploit them to the fullest of ability. Research has shown cows form social bonds and become stressed when separated from their preferred companions. Some even show excitement during problem-solving tasks. Cows also remember faces. Cows can recognize individual humans, other cows, emotional situations. Cows display fear, curiosity, affection, and stress responses. They're very interesting, cute, dynamic, intelligent creatures that we unfortunately have found a way to use for our consumption. But it's not just about animal welfare. Dairy has a major impact on our climate because cows emit methane through digestion. Methane, and yes, this means either through manure or farts, trap far more heat than CO2s over short periods. It's a major agricultural greenhouse gas, and satellite studies continue tracking dairy methane emissions globally. It's that big of a problem. So, I have presented such a conundrum, but do not worry, here are some tips and hacks for ethical consumers. If you want to reduce your harm to cows, here's what you can do. Even if you transition gradually, which a lot of people have to, that's fine. Any effort is better than no effort at all. And once you realize just how easy it is to give up dairy, then you can do it all together. You can put oat milk in your coffee, use vegan butter because it's extremely convincing, and vegan mayonnaise. All of those things, plant milk, milk, especially when it's in your coffee or in a smoothie, butter, and vegan mayonnaise. All of those things, you almost cannot taste a difference at all. Some things they're still working on. They are not quite there yet with cheese, for instance, but other things like ice cream, some types of yogurt, cream cheese, it's very, very close. And a health benefit, there's no cholesterol. Why? Because we only consume cholesterol from animals. Plants do not contain cholesterol. Here are some ways in which you can use plant milks depending on the situation. For your coffee, it's often best to use oat milk. For your protein shakes, you can use soy milk, very high in protein. For baking, you can use soy or oat. For cereal, you can use almond or oat. And for creamy sauces, you can use cashew. I personally use organic soy milk in just about everything because it is extremely high in protein and very low in cost. Some other types of milk that exist that are animal-free would be rice milk, coconut milk, flaxseed milk, and hemp milk. Some of those might run a bit pricier, and the rice milk and the coconut milk just is a little watered down. It doesn't contain a ton of nutrition, but try them all out and see which one works best for you. Speaking of some innovation and some progress and some alternatives, what we are going to see in the future is called animal-free dairy or lab-made dairy. It's precision fermentation, and it's one of the biggest breakthroughs in the food industry. Scientists can now produce milk proteins using microbes instead of cows. What they do is they insert milk protein DNA into microbes. That means that they do have to actually take some original cow milk DNA from the original source to begin with. Then they ferment it in tanks so it reproduces. Then they can produce whey or casein without animals. This could create real dairy proteins without cows with far lower emissions. For ethical consumers, dairy is no longer just about nutrition or taste. It intersects with animal consciousness, climate change, labor systems, biotechnology, environmental sustainability, and consumer transparency. Whether someone becomes vegan or just reduces their dairy, awareness itself is reshaping the future of food. If you're not vegan yet, I'm sure you're thinking, well, I just can't give up cheese. Cheese is so hard to give up. I am addicted to cheese. It's my favorite food. I love it so much. And so maybe you are having some hesitance. Maybe it's a lot of black and white thinking. You can give up everything but cheese. Maybe try that. But there is a very good logical explanation as to why cheese is so hard for consumers to give up. It's not just a habit, it's actually biology, psychology, culture, memory, chemistry, and history all tangled together. Cheese has been around for a long time. Humans started making it around 7,000 years ago after discovering milk stored in animal stomachs naturally curdled because of enzymes. Cheese became revolutionary because it preserved for long winters, which was a very real concern back in those days. It was revolutionary because it was concentrated calories and fat, also something that people needed a lot of back then because they did not have as much food readily available. The cheese traveled well, it tasted good, and it transformed bland grains into rich meals. Over centuries, entire cultures formed around it. We have Italians with the Parmesan, French Brie, Swiss Alpine wheels, Middle Eastern labna, Indian paneer, and English cheddar. Cheese became comfort, identity, celebration, nostalgia. But it's not just traditional and cultural. Your brain actually has some chemistry behind the cravings. One major reason cheese is difficult to quit is a milk protein called casein. When humans digest casein, it breaks into compounds called casomorphins. These compounds can interact with dopamine and opioid-related pathways associated with a pleasure reward. Researchers agree cheese is reward-enhancing, comfort-inducing, habit-reinforcing. But it takes 10 pounds of milk to make just 1 pound of cheese. It is concentrated fat, concentrated salt, concentrated flavor compounds, and concentrated casein. The salt, fat, and umami is the perfect combination for why people love the taste of cheese so much. This creates intense cognitive dissonance. Some might say, I care about animals, but I still want to eat cheese. And that conflict is extremely common. Vegan cheese seems to be the solution, right? Well, some might say that vegan cheeses often fail because they lack fermentation depth, proper fat structure, melt behavior, those umami compounds, and aging chemistry. It's not the best, but there is innovation happening with the precision fermentation of cheese. Vegan cheese, that is. Companies are now creating dairy proteins without the cows. So again, this is the lab-made compound. It's almost like beer brewing for milk proteins. That's how the process works. This could produce real casein, real melt, real stretch, real flavor, all without animal agriculture. And some of these major innovators include Perfect Day, New Culture, and Formo. Those brands, those companies aim to create authentic dairy experiences with dramatically reduced animal suffering and environmental impact. Some vegans might argue it's not fully vegan because you had to originally get that enzyme from a cow, but for me, I say absolutely, if it is going to encourage people to not consume real dairy, then it's so much better. You can have your cake and eat it too, literally. Or in this case, you can have your cheese and eat it too. Modern plant-based cheesemakers now use traditional aging methods, microbial cultures, cashew fermentation, oat milk bases, chickpea proteins, fungal fermentation, and the result is better rind development, sharpness, funk, stretch, and creaminess. Some modern vegan cheeses are winning awards against dairy versions. When you are quitting cheese, you don't have to quit the experience. What you might actually be craving is creaminess, like a creamy pasta, or the gooiness of a pizza, or some savory comfort, salty richness. What you can do instead of cheese would be cashew cream sauce, miso and nutritional yeast, smoked almond spreads, cultured vegan brie, and tahini pasta sauces. Also, if you're craving that umami flavor, you can try to eat more mushrooms, miso, nutritional yeast, caramelized onions, soy sauce, roasted garlic, and sun-dried tomatoes. You might be thinking, that's a far cry from cheese, but I'm telling you, this umami flavor is what you are probably after, because those ingredients trigger similar savory satisfaction. Also, when you quit cheese, many people report cravings sharply decrease after 3 to 6 weeks going dairy-free. Your taste buds will change and adapt surprisingly fast. Foods will become richer, saltier, creamier than before. And that is absolutely true. I was vegetarian for many, many years, maybe around 10 years. I knew all too well about the dairy industry, and I just couldn't bring myself to eat cheese any longer. So I switched to vegan, and I wanted to at least test it out for 30 days. I did that for Veganuary, which is on January 1st, as a New Year's resolution. At first, it was difficult. I didn't know how to get creative in the kitchen, but I'm not kidding. After just a few weeks of no cheese, I felt the results. I wasn't really craving cheese. I got that creaminess and gooiness and richness and saltiness from other things like hummus or guacamole, tahini pasta, different types of sauces. It was very satisfying, and I realized I really don't miss cheese. I mean, yeah, I remember what it tastes like, and it's great, but for me, the guilt factor was far too strong. I did not want to go back. Also, my complexion cleared, and I lost weight in my face. Those were surprising benefits of stopping dairy. Maybe you're already vegan, or you're trying to go vegan, and you're very, very vigilant about reading ingredients, reading labels when you are shopping. If it's not a whole food, you're going to want to see that list and see if a product contains. A very quick hack is to look at the very bottom in bold. It will say whether or not it contains milk. Why? Because milk is a common food allergen. Ideally, packaging would say very clearly whether or not it's vegan, but we don't always get that luxury when we're shopping. Vegans already know this. Why are there so many foods that contain milk? Why are milk ingredients in so many products? It is very, very frustrating when you are trying your best and it seems like every single thing from sauces to packaged food to frozen food and everything in between has milk in it. For ethical consumers and vegans, dairy can feel almost impossible to avoid. Milk powder, whey, casein, lactose, butterfat, cheese derivatives. They appear in everything: chips, bread, instant noodles, even some medications. This didn't happen by accident. The modern flood of dairy ingredients is deeply tied to World War II industrial farming, government subsidies, food science, and the economics of mass production. What you are about to hear is not conspiracy. You can look it up. It is the true history of dairy. The World War II turning point. America's dairy explosion. During World War II, the United States dramatically increased agricultural production to feed soldiers and allies overseas. They needed fat, calories, nutrients, energy that could sustain them through the winters in Europe. A lot of farmers that used to grow crops had to change to become dairy farmers because the U.S. government encouraged bigger dairy herds, mechanized milking, powdered milk production, refrigerated transport, and long shelf life dairy ingredients. But after the war ended, America had a surplus of milk, too much milk, a giant dairy infrastructure, and highly productive cows. There was a problem. Americans could not drink all of the milk that had been produced and was continuing to be produced. So the dairy industry pivoted. Milk became cheese, cheese became powdered additives, whey became filler protein, milk solids entered processed foods. The federal support systems also helped maintain high production. That is why it's being added to so much. We have too much dairy starting after World War II. Too much to consume. It was too difficult for those crop farmers turned dairy farmers to go back to crops. So they started marketing dairy to Americans harder and harder to get rid of it all, but they also found it was very profitable and it lasted longer than the crops, so milk marketing campaigns began. The government once bought enormous dairy surpluses to stabilize prices. This led to famous government cheese stockpiles in the late 20th century. Milk wasn't just food anymore, it became an industrial ingredient economy. Dairy is cheap, but that's because of scale and subsidies. Milk ingredients became relatively inexpensive because the dairy system was already massively scaled up after World War II. Food manufacturers discovered dairy additives could improve the texture of their product, increase creaminess, extend shelf life, and boost flavor cheaply. That's why whey or milk powder appears in chips, crackers, soup, protein bars, candy, bread, everything. The dairy lobbying became extremely powerful as well. Dairy marketing exploded. Milk was promoted as patriotic because of the war, healthy, essential for children, and absolutely necessary for strong bones. Your body doesn't really absorb that calcium as well as it could calcium from plants. We're meant to think that calcium only comes from milk and almost nothing else, but that's simply not true. Quite the opposite. There are so many foods that are high in calcium. When they say milk is necessary for strong bones, what I realized is when I started traveling to different countries, they were very tall, they had very strong bones, and guess what? They did not drink milk at all. If they did, it was maybe a tiny splash of milk in their coffee. The mere idea of drinking a glass of milk, cow's milk, is comical to other cultures. They think it's really silly because it's truly an American thing, and their bones are just fine. Do you remember the famous Got Milk campaign in the 90s? It was one of the most recognizable food advertising campaigns in American history. I remember it because I collected those. I used to collect the Got Milk ads because they'd always have a celebrity posing in magazines. It was a full spread, and they always had a milk mustache. I remember Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears, and cutting those out of my magazine along with other celebrities, singers, athletes, musicians, and I had a whole collage of Got Milk ads with celebrities on them that I taped to my closet door because that's how preteens decorated back in the 90s. So I remember the Got Milk campaign very vividly. But it wasn't just that campaign. The dairy industry also benefited from school milk programs, agricultural subsidies, nutrition policy influence, and this normalized dairy as the default ingredient. I remember going to school and having milk every single day with lunch. They offered regular milk, chocolate milk, and strawberry milk. Nobody touched the strawberry milk. It was disgusting. Everybody wanted the chocolate milk, including myself. So yes, milk was pushed really hard in the school programs. Now, let's move on to hidden dairy ingredients to watch out for. Some common sneaky ingredients are going to be whey, casein, and by the way, that's spelled Casein. I have always been saying it casein. I just today, for this episode, finally looked it up. It is casein, but it looks very different. Lactose, milk solids, butterfat, sodium caseinate, curds, and ghee. Those all come from milk. Weird places you're going to find dairy: salt and vinegar chips, dark chocolate, instant mashed potatoes, non-dairy creamers. Yeah, even if it's lactose free, that does not mean animal free. It just means they've removed the lactose. Flavored nuts, wine fining agents, medications, and even chewing gum. You can find milk sometimes in those products. If you see anything with some type of variation of casein, like sodium caseinate, calcium caseinate, anything with that type of root word of casein, it's going to be from milk. Before I mentioned different types of plant milks like oat milk, soy milk, almond milk, but did you know there is also pea milk, like pea protein, potato milk, and macadamia milk? All of those are great alternatives, and all of them are going to have significantly lower environmental footprints compared to dairy. Thankfully, now we are demanding vegan certification, cruelty-free verification, cleaner ingredient lists. Here are some interesting facts about dairy marketing. Governments often support dairy advertising. I always find it very, very sinister. If I ever see a billboard or even the packaging or even a transport semi-truck that has an image on it of happy cows in a field. The product is milk or cheese or some form of dairy, and sometimes it's even like a cartoon form of a cow that has a big smile on their face. And I think that is so far-fetched and opposite from the truth, knowing what I know and other vegans know about the dairy industry. That is the epitome of psychological marketing to make you think that what you're buying is guilt-free and somehow the cow is cool with it, being exploited, being milked, being artificially inseminated, being separated from their babies, never being allowed to go and graze outside in the grass and see the sun, and being crammed together in a small confined space. Another brand that comes to mind is Baby Bell, which is the laughing cow as its mascot or its icon for the brand and on its packaging. While they do produce a vegan cheese, believe it or not, I find the concept dark, actually, to have a smiling cow on their products when you know the reality behind it. On to some shocking facts about dairy marketing. Governments often support dairy advertising. In many countries, dairy checkoff programs collect money from farmers to fund large-scale advertising. Dairy promotions may appear independent, but they are partially industry funded. It blurs the line between public nutrition messaging and commercial advertising. We might be thinking it's good for us when that's not necessarily true. That happy cow imagery I was just discussing often does not match the industrial reality. The advertising is going to make you think there are open pastures, blue skies, small family farms, whereas the industrial reality is large confined feeding systems, automated milking, that separation from mother and baby, and high output breeding. Truly a factory farm, treating these animals as if they are machines. And did you know that dairy and masculinity were deliberately linked? Milk ads historically targeted men using athletes, bodybuilders, sports sponsorships. The goal was to make milk appear powerful and masculine rather than infantile. Lactose intolerance was historically ignored. Globally, most adults have some degree of lactose malabsorption, yet many ads frame dairy as universally necessary. Critics say it marginalized non-European populations, different cultural diets, and plant-based tradition. If you look up studies on the internet, it is great to consider the following. Ask yourself, who funded the study? Who sponsors the campaign? Is it government linked? Is it independently verified? Other marketing tricks they're going to use would be nostalgia, childhood memories, purity symbolism, motherhood imagery, national identity. White liquid imagery actually subconsciously signals cleanliness, innocence, and simplicity. These associations are extremely powerful with milk advertising. Not only is milk a common food allergen that a lot of people cannot tolerate, or maybe you do tolerate it technically, but you're wondering why you always feel so bloated or why your complexion is not so great, that could very well be linked to dairy. Dairy and milk has a number of health concerns. One of them is hormones. Any product that we consume from an animal, whether it's a direct product like meat or a byproduct like milk, that is going to contain hormones because it came from a living creature. When we ingest those hormones, they go into our body and stay there. All of those hormones are going to influence our own hormones and our body. Plants do not have hormones. So there's one advantage right there, plant-based vegan diet over traditional standard American diet. Another factor is with all of the crowded, confined populations on these factory farms, they are going to inject the livestock, in this case cows, with antibiotics to keep them from getting sick, to prevent disease, and so on. When we consume the milk, we are also consuming the antibiotics, which is super bad for antibiotic resistance. That means the next time we get sick and need antibiotics, they're not really going to work. It's going to become a huge problem because it's going to keep us sick, or we are going to require stronger and stronger antibiotics over time because our tolerance is too high just from the foods that we chose to eat. Another thing, milk contains cholesterol. Every single animal product is going to contain cholesterol. The same thing with hormones. It comes from a living creature. It has cholesterol. Plants, no cholesterol. All in all, when you weigh the health pros versus cons when it comes to milk, sure, it could have protein and calcium, but when you compare dairy milk to another source of plant-based calcium, then all in all, milk is not good for you. There are too many cons that outweigh the pros. Lastly, let's discuss alternatives, brands, and innovation. If you think plant-based milk is a new thing, well, think again, because soy milk dates back over 1,000 years in China. Almond milk was common in medieval Europe because it lasted longer than animal milk without refrigeration. Modern vegan dairy boomed in the 1970s through the 1990s along animal rights and environmental movements. The 2010s introduced oat milk culture and cafe adoption. And in the 2020s, it brought precision fermentation and lab-grown dairy proteins. If you are interested in oat milk, it is creamy, naturally sweet, and a cafe favorite because it actually foams better than cow's milk. People love it because of its texture, lower environmental footprint compared to, say, almond milk, and it's just excellent for coffee. Some popular oat milk products would be Oatly Barista Edition Oat, Planet Oat Original Oat Milk, and Oatly Full Fat Original Oat Milk. Soy milk, my personal favorite, as long as it's organic. It is the original vegan milk. It is smooth, slightly thicker than almond milk, and often with a subtle bean aroma. It is the highest protein among all of the common plant milks. It's the closest nutrition profile to dairy milk, and it's excellent for cooking and baking. I use it for everything. A popular brand, Pacific Foods Ultra Soy Original. Next, we have coconut milk. This is rich, tropical, luxurious. It's silky with a glossy texture. Its uses might include curry, desserts, ice cream, and whipped toppings. A great brand to check out, So Delicious. They have a dairy-free, organic, unsweetened coconut milk. Vegan cheese has come a long way, and modern vegan cheese can melt, stretch, and brown just like traditional cheese. Some of the top brands would be Violife, Just Like Cheddar Shreds Shredded Cheese, Field Roast Chow Block Creamy Original, and Baby Bell Plant-Based Cheese Bites. However, the debate is out whether or not you should support a brand that is not 100% vegan. As I mentioned, Baby Bell, and as you might already know, they are a dairy company. All of their products, except for those plant-based cheese bites, are made with milk. And so the question is, if I support this by buying the vegan version of their cheese product, I'm still technically giving money and helping an unethical company profit. However, I think any vegan product that is out there is great to try. And you are sending a message to them. If you buy it, you are saying, I want more of this. So if it's a product that is successful in their mind, they're going to introduce more and more. Every single vegan thing that we buy is sending a message. Some other excellent brands to check out. Miyoko's Creamery. It's known for artisanal cashew and oat milk-based wheels, vegan mozzarella, and cream cheese that melts and spreads beautifully. Violife, excellent for everyday use, offering great vegan cheddar, provolone, and Parmesan slices. Daya, a household name in the vegan dairy. They've been around for a while, offering a massive variety of shreds, blocks, and slices that melt perfectly. When it comes to milk, we have Oatly, the gold standard for creamy oat milk, especially popular in coffee. Malk Organics features premium, clean label plant milks free from oils and artificial gums. Califia Farms, outstanding for creamy nut-based milks and fully vegan coffee creamers. However, that is one to watch out for because they have a lot of dairy products as well. They're not a fully vegan brand. Butter, we have Miyoko's Creamery again, produces rich, cultured European-style plant butters that brown and bake just like dairy butter. Earth Balance, the classic, widely available baking and spreading stick brand. Country Crock Plant Butter, a mainstream line of vegan plant butters that offers a one-to-one swap in traditional recipes. But again, that's another example of a brand that is not totally vegan, so just be careful. Make sure the product says the word vegan on it before you buy. When it comes to ice cream, So Delicious, an industry leader with a vast array of coconut, oat, and cashew milk-based pints. Nadamu features decadent organic coconut milk-based ice cream with incredible textures. Ben & Jerry's, easily accessible, fully vegan versions of their most iconic, chunky, and indulgent flavors made with an almond or sunflower butter base. And I can say my absolute favorite is Ben & Jerry's Netflix and chilled vegan style. It is so good. It's out of this world. It tastes so much like dairy. It's crazy. But of course, without the guilt and without the animal. So that was a long episode of all about dairy products, milk, cheese, yogurt, butter, cream cheese. I hope you learned something new and got something out of this episode. That is always the goal, and something to keep in mind when you go shopping next time. Try a new recipe, have a delicious meal. Every single meal that you eat makes a difference, and you can choose to use animal products or not. Nothing feels better and tastes better than a clean conscience. Be sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out my kids' books that I wrote and illustrated. There is one called Reasons We Are Vegans, which discusses this very topic about not taking milk from mother cows. Just Google those on the internet. You should find them. Thank you for joining me, and be sure to tune in next time. Bye.